effective in a super minority.
So you've won in the state house races in a district that votes otherwise generally Republican. And now you're running for the U.S. Senate in a state that hasn't had a Democratic senator since Trent Lott was elected in 1988. Before he was elected was the last Democrat. So what do you see as your path to victory in a state like this? You know, what are the ways that you've been able to win over Republicans in the past? And what do you see as your way you can do that in the U.S. Senate race?
Well, I'm a reasonable person. I'm a moderate person, and I'm a Mississippian through and through. I've never lived anywhere but Mississippi, and I've lived in Oxford, Mississippi, and Jackson, Mississippi, and 2 different places on the Gulf Coast. And so I know our state very, very well. I have the support of, as I said before, most, if not all, of my colleagues in the House and in the Senate on the Democratic side of the aisle. I have the endorsement of the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus. And I won a primary and a runoff in the Democrat partisan primary. I won both of those, and we've been able to raise the money that's necessary to run a statewide campaign. And my message, obviously, in my last 3 elections, has translated fairly well to Republicans. And I would have to say I'm talking about moderate Republicans and independents, really, because, the hardcore right wing, the sort of Trump base, is not ever going to vote for a Democrat. That's just outside of their realm of comprehension that they would do something like that. But there are plenty of folks in the middle in Mississippi who have just defaulted in terms of their vote to the Republican candidate over the last 20 years. And if I can give them someone who they can be for, who happens to have a D by his name, then I believe that I can get those votes. I'm polling fairly well right now amongst likely white voters. And, if I do well in the African-American vote, which we think is going to exceed expectations this year in Mississippi, much like it did in Alabama, then I don't have to have but about 22% of white voters. And I believe that I can get that. I've done that in the past. So, you hate to break things down the way I just did, white versus black in terms of voters, but that's the way the analysts look at this. And I'm in a very good position to pick up 1 out of every 5 white voters in the state of Mississippi. My opponent, Roger Wicker, has been in Washington for 24 years, and there's really not much that we have to show for it here in Mississippi. We're still in 50th in most every category that you want to be first in, and folks are really, really ready for a change in Mississippi, and I hope that I represent that change.
What are some of the issues that you're hearing people talk about, some of the kinds of changes that they would like to see?
Well, I've just left the floor of the Mississippi House of Representatives, where we are currently in a special session on infrastructure, which is at a crisis point in the state of Mississippi. And that's because for the last 5 to 7 years, we have seen this problem coming, but the Republican majority has simply refused to do anything about it because they lack the political will to do anything like, for instance, increase the gas tax, which would help pay for the required maintenance of our roads and bridges. Instead, they have consistently been dedicated to cutting corporate taxes. They've cut corporate taxes over that period to the tune of about $750 million. That's revenue the state was receiving, and now we're not receiving. And the problem that we're addressing here in terms of our infrastructure is about a $400 million per year problem. So you can see if we hadn't made that decision to cut those corporate taxes, we would have the money to address this road and bridge problem. That's just poor decision making, and now they are finally trying to do something about it, but it's really too little too late, and we're only going to raise through this special session about half of the amount of revenue that we need to address this problem. We refuse to expand Medicaid under the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and in doing so, we turned down over $1 billion a year that could have come. Our tax dollars that we pay to the federal government could have come back home, and we could have used that money to expand Medicaid to take care of folks who we call the working poor and provide them with a basic safety net sort of level of health care. A healthier population is a more productive population. Also, if we would have done that, we would have created 8,000 to 9,000 good, high-paying medical industry jobs. And we could have helped our small rural hospitals which are now suffering because disproportionate share payments have gone away, but there's been no substitute, which was the intent of Medicaid expansion, to take care of this uncompensated care that these rural hospitals have to provide to people. So it was just a really boneheaded decision. This could be reversed if we just changed our leadership. And then finally, I already addressed the education issue. I won't go back into that, but this is something that it's just been a decision to chronically underfund and devalue public education and public educators. And I think people have just reached the breaking point. There's one other factor that we have to address in Mississippi that our leadership really refuses to acknowledge exists, and that is that we have a brain drain. We've had 35,000 young folks leave the state of Mississippi over the last 4 or 5 years. We're losing that population. No other state in the country is, except for Mississippi. And there's a reason why. We're not providing the type of environment where young people want to locate and find a job and build their careers and build their families. And it's really hurting our state. So people are tired of those things, and they're ready to have somebody try to grab the bull by the horns and make a change before it's too late, and we're irretrievably forever in last place in Mississippi.
Are there any other things that you would like to make sure that we talk about?
Well, I think that people should understand that Mississippi is not as far gone as they may think, because we really are not that long out of power in terms of partisan politics in Mississippi. But we have a lot of people in this state who may, as I said, have defaulted to the Republican Party and in terms of their voting in the last 20 years. But they're reasonable folks who just are conservative in terms of the way they view religion and the Second Amendment and those kinds of things. But they're not anti-Democrat. And we can elect Democrats statewide in Mississippi. We have an attorney general now who's a Democrat, and when he runs next year for governor, he's likely to win that race. We probably will pick up a couple of other statewide offices next year. But everything that we do this year, in my campaign, in Mike Espy's campaign, in the campaigns of the 4 folks who are running for Congress, is building political infrastructure in the state of Mississippi that we haven't had for a long, long time. And so even if we come up short in November, there's still a positive here, and that is that we built something that we can move forward into 2019, and we can continue to have successes in next year as well.
Yeah, I've been impressed looking at some of the events and things that are happening, how much it seems like the Democrats who are running across the state are working with each other and talking to each other and having events together.
Yeah, I am very proud. I said this Saturday at a speech I gave to a Democratic fundraiser that was headlined by John Bel Edwards, Louisiana's governor, that, we have a tremendous slate this year. All 4 of our congressional candidates, including Congressman Thompson, obviously, and then myself, Mike Espy, I am proud to stand on the stage with this slate and work together and move Mississippi forward. And everybody in that slate feels the same as I do, that now is the time that Mississippi is ready for this change and that we can go to Washington and we can change things. So I'm proud of this group that we have, and I think it's the best group I've seen in my adult lifetime. So I think you're going to see some successes, and I think you're going to see some big changes. And if Mississippi elects 2 Democratic senators, we're going to shock the world.
Yeah, we would love that.
We would too.
If our listeners would like to help your campaign out, how can they do that?
Oh, I would love to get some help from your listeners, Kelly. And the way to do that is to go to www.Baria4Mississippi. That's BARIAFOR, Mississippi spelled out, Baria4Mississippi.com. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Twitter @DBaria. I think I'm on Instagram. I'm not really sure how to operate Instagram, but we're on all social media platforms, and they could write a check if they wanted to, Baria4Mississippi, and send it to our campaign office at 555 Tom Bigby Street in Jackson, Mississippi. If they want to volunteer, they can send an email to info@Baria4Mississippi.com. We would be happy to have people help with virtual phone banking, with writing postcards, with canvassing, or whatever other way that they would like to plug in and help, and we will take all the help that we can get.
Excellent. And we'll put links for that up on our website as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking with me. I'm so excited to see such great candidates running in Mississippi. And, I'm really excited as we've been talking to people throughout the South of how much energy there seems to be among Democrats this year seems to really be growing.
Thank you, Kelly. And as I travel the state, I can tell you that I feel it on the ground here in Mississippi. Don't count us out. Don't write us off. We're working hard. There are folks outside of Mississippi who are coming into our state to help with get out the vote efforts, registration, and then getting people to the polls is obviously critical. So we're doing our part this time, and please don't write us off. Help us.
Thank you, and we'll be watching your race very closely as we head toward November.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant-Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast.